It's very important when you have the best players in the world together. You got to compete and you got to play hard and you got to show the fans how good they really are.
In a stunning turn of events, Stephanie White has been replaced, and the legendary Larry Bird is stepping in, sending shockwaves through the entire basketball community. The news didn't just catch fans off guard, it left rising superstar Caitlin Clark completely speechless. The move has sparked endless questions about what this means for the future of the team, the league, and Clark's own journey. So, was this a strategic decision, or a bold power play that could change everything? Either way, history is unfolding right before our eyes. The bombshell announcement that shakes the WNBA. It was the kind of moment that no one could have written into the script. Not the fans who had packed Gainbridge Fieldhouse with their usual buzz of excitement. Not the commentators who had covered hundreds of games and thought they had seen it all. Not even the sharpest basketball analysts who make a living predicting the unpredictable. Everyone came expecting the ordinary. Another night of action, another game to dissect, another highlight to replay. But the instant Caitlin Clark stepped up to the microphone, the ordinary dissolved into something extraordinary. The arena, moments earlier vibrating with chants, cheers, and restless anticipation, suddenly fell into a silence so sharp it was almost physical. Thousands of voices cut off mid-sentence. It was as if the very pulse of the building had been frozen in time. Every spectator leaned forward, every camera tightened its focus, every ear strained, desperate not to miss a single syllable. In that single pause before she spoke, Caitlin Clark held the entire basketball world in the palm of her hand. Then came the words. Not dramatic in tone, not wrapped in mystery, but delivered with a clarity so blunt it cut through the air like glass. What she revealed was not just a roster update or a casual change within the Indiana Fever organization. It was a bombshell that detonated instantly across sports media. A new head coach had been appointed. But not just any coach. This was a name no one had expected. A figure so monumental that their very presence threatened to shake the foundations of the WNBA itself. This wasn't a simple transition of leadership. It wasn't a decision tucked neatly into the margins of routine team strategy. This was a historic pivot, a seismic moment with the power to reshape everything. Player influence, organizational control, even the unwritten rules about who really steers the direction of professional basketball. And standing at the center of it all was Caitlin Clark, a rookie whose gravity already extended far beyond her years. She wasn't just a rising star anymore, she was the spark of something far bigger, a force commanding attention both on and off the court. As the announcement echoed, the questions began to fly with relentless speed. How had such a legendary figure become linked to the Fever in the first place? What secret conversations and midnight meetings had led to this moment? Was this truly about basketball strategy, or was it about rewriting history itself? And most importantly, what did this alliance mean for the league, for the next generation of players, and for the millions of fans who were watching a revolution unfold before their eyes? Social media erupted almost instantly. Commentators scrambled to deliver hot takes. Analysts debated whether this was genius or pure gamble. Every sports outlet lit up with speculation, dissecting each detail, while fans flooded forums and timelines, arguing and celebrating all at once. The energy inside the arena found its mirror online, electric, relentless, impossible to contain. It was the kind of news that spread not just like wildfire, but like an unstoppable storm, drenching every corner of the sports world in its wake. The significance was undeniable. The Indiana Fever had not just appointed a new head coach, they had lit the fuse on a new era. An era where the old rules might no longer apply, where convention could be shattered, and where boldness would dictate the future of women's basketball. In that moment, Caitlin Clark was not simply relaying a decision made by the organization. She had become the messenger of transformation, the face of a movement too big to ignore. For fans, it meant possibility. For critics, it meant uncertainty. For the league, it meant a chance to stretch beyond what had always been done. And for Caitlin herself, it meant stepping into a role far greater than anyone thought a rookie could hold. Because this wasn't just an announcement. It was an earthquake, a call to attention, a story that would be told for years to come. And just when the buzz reached its loudest point, the world turned back to her. All eyes fixed on the young star once again. Caitlin Clark speaks out. But what exactly will she reveal next? And why might her words change everything we thought we knew? Stay glued. Caitlin Clark versus Stephanie White, a brewing conflict inside the Fever. The storm began with one phrase, just a handful of words meant to highlight team growth, that instead set the basketball world ablaze. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White stood at the podium after a hard-fought win, fresh off a 5-game streak, and chose to frame Caitlin Clark's injury absence as a blessing in disguise. Her intention was clear, to praise the resilience of her roster, the way players like Kelsey Mitchell and Natasha Howard had stepped into bigger roles. But intention and perception rarely travel the same road, and what White thought was encouragement quickly turned into controversy. The reaction was immediate and ferocious, social media feeds filled with anger, confusion, and outright disbelief. To many fans, White's comment didn't come across as uplifting. It felt like a slight. Sarcasm and scorn poured in. "So she's saying Caitlin's holding the team back?" wrote one user. Another, more cutting, declared she wouldn't shed a tear if Clark never came back. The backlash wasn't just noise. It was a chorus that grew louder with every retweet, every clip shared, every heated debate online. One blunt post summed up the mood in 4 sharp words: "I hate this coach." The timing of the statement only added fuel. Caitlin Clark wasn't simply on the bench resting. She was sidelined, recovering, working to return at full strength. To label her absence a blessing struck many as insensitive and dismissive. It felt like erasing the emotional and symbolic weight Clark carries, not just as a star player, but as the very heartbeat of the Fever. Critics argued that White, respected though she may be, had failed to grasp the deeper meaning of Clark's presence. Her words seemed to reduce the impact of a player whose arrival had electrified both the team and the entire league. And yet, the criticism wasn't limited to that one remark. It tapped into a larger conversation simmering beneath the surface. Is Stephanie White truly the right coach for Caitlin Clark? White's resume is solid, her experience unquestionable. But coaching isn't only about credentials. It's about connection, vision, and alignment with a player's unique style. And according to Clark herself, that alignment has often been missing. In a candid podcast conversation, Clark revealed what many suspected, that her instinct-driven, high IQ, aggressive style sometimes clashes with White's system. She recalled moments of brilliance, such as scoring 32 points alongside 9 assists and 8 rebounds, only to feel boxed in by restrictions. One memory stood out. In a tense game against New York, she nearly logged a triple-double, but found herself restrained, criticized for taking calculated risks that, in her eyes, could have widened the lead and energized the fans. Instead of being allowed to ride her instincts, she was benched after a turnover, the so-called teaching moment, cutting short her natural flow. For Clark, basketball is not about hiding from mistakes. It's about seizing opportunities, trusting instincts, and taking the kinds of risks that shift momentum and thrill crowds. Her frustration grew sharper when she described White's late-game strategies. Even with a comfortable lead, Clark noticed the team slowing down, shifting to clock management rather than capitalizing on open looks. To her, this overly cautious style left points on the floor, dulled the team's rhythm, and left the fans with a version of the game less exciting than it could be. What makes the tension even more striking is Clark's sense that White is trying to mold her into someone she is not. She compared it to being shaped into the likeness of Paige Bueckers, a brilliant player in her own right, but one with a more reserved approach. Clark, by contrast, thrives on improvisation, creativity, and fearless decision-making. Trying to tone her down, to rein in her instincts, is like dimming the light of a player born to shine at full wattage. The larger question isn't whether Stephanie White is a good coach. She is. The real issue is whether she is the right coach for Caitlin Clark. Basketball history has shown time and again that elite players reach their full greatness only when they are trusted to play their game. not forced into someone else's system. Clark's reflections suggest a truth that resonates far beyond her own journey. The chemistry between coach and star can be just as critical as raw talent itself. Because when Caitlin Clark is unleashed, when she is trusted without restraint, she doesn't just play basketball, she transforms it. She turns arenas into theaters of awe, fans into believers, and games into unforgettable moments. Now let's uncover the remarkable journey of the rookie who turned the Indiana Fever into both a cultural sensation and a commercial powerhouse. Caitlin Clark transforms the Indiana Fever into a powerhouse. Caitlin Clark's arrival in Indiana wasn't just the debut of a rookie. It was the ignition of a movement. From the very first time she laced up for the Fever, it became clear that she wasn't stepping into a franchise, she was reshaping it. What had once been a team struggling for relevance suddenly became the beating heart of the WNBA. Clark didn't just play basketball, she altered the definition of what it means to be a game changer in professional sports. Before her, Gainbridge Fieldhouse often felt more like a quiet backdrop than a true home court. The energy came in pockets, the stands sometimes only half filled, and excitement was reserved for flashes of competitive spirit. But with Clark's presence, everything changed overnight. Season ticket sales soared by over 400%, and the arena transformed into a fortress of noise and anticipation. Fans traveled not just from Indiana, but from across the country to catch a glimpse of her brilliance. Every game felt like an event, every possession like a stage for the next highlight that would electrify the crowd. But her impact went beyond the hardwood. The Indiana Fever were no longer just a basketball team. They became a cultural attraction. Corporate sponsors, once hesitant to tie themselves to a franchise buried in mediocrity, suddenly rushed to the table. Local businesses, national brands, and even global campaigns scrambled to align with Clark, knowing that her presence could multiply visibility. She wasn't just an athlete. She was an ambassador whose name carried power in boardrooms as much as it did on the scoreboard. Financially and commercially, the Fever experienced a rebirth. Merchandise sales skyrocketed, sponsorships poured in, media coverage went from an occasional spotlight to full-on national attention. What once was a team overlooked by mainstream outlets now dominated headlines, sports talk shows, and digital features. Clark wasn't just winning games, she was commanding narratives. On social media, her every move became viral currency. A no-look pass here, a deep three-pointer there, it didn't matter. Highlights spread like wildfire across platforms, pulling in casual fans who may never have tuned into a WNBA game before. Comment sections buzzed with awe, hashtags trended nightly, and in a matter of months, Clark became not only the face of her team, but also the face of women's basketball itself. Interviews, late-night appearances, and feature articles, her influence transcended the court and embedded itself into mainstream culture. Yet perhaps the most remarkable part of Clark's rise lies in the power she wields inside the Fever organization. Rarely does a rookie gain influence over the inner workings of a professional team, but Clark's gravitational pull changed that. Her voice has carried into conversations that go far beyond plays and box scores. Reports suggest she's had input in coaching approaches, team strategies, and even broader organizational decisions. For a franchise that once searched desperately for stability, Clark's presence has become the anchor, giving the team not only star power, but also a vision for its future. This combination of athletic brilliance and organizational influence is something almost unheard of in professional sports. Clark isn't simply a rookie finding her footing. She's a franchise architect, steering the Fever into an era where sport, culture, and commerce merge into a single unstoppable force. Her charisma draws fans, her leadership galvanizes teammates, and her strategic awareness reshapes the very identity of the organization. In every sense, Caitlin Clark is more than just a basketball player. She has redefined what it means to carry a franchise, to shoulder the hopes of a city, and to spark a national conversation. She is a rookie, yes, but one who has already left an imprint deeper than many veterans achieve in their entire careers. And yet, with all her brilliance, the lingering question remains: has her full potential truly been unlocked? Or has cautious leadership kept her brilliance from reaching its highest form? Indiana's basketball icon steps in, but what legendary figure has the power to harness Clark's fire while reshaping the Fever's destiny? Let's explore how Larry Bird could transform the Indiana Fever. When you hear the name Larry Bird, the first thought that comes to mind is pure basketball greatness. He isn't just another star who came and went. He's a name that reshaped the sport. Someone whose presence still lingers in every corner of the game. Bird's career didn't just build records. It built a legacy that towers over generations. 3 NBA championships, 3 MVP titles, a dozen All-Star appearances. And after hanging up his jersey, he didn't walk away. He stayed, molding teams as a coach and later guiding franchises as an executive. Larry Bird became more than just a player. He became a symbol. A figure who carried with him not only the sharpest basketball mind of his era, but also the relentless hunger to win. From players who studied his movements on the hardwood to organizations that leaned on his wisdom in the front office, Bird's influence stretched far beyond his own stat sheet. He was not simply part of basketball history, he was one of its architects. But Bird's story is impossible to separate from the place that raised him, Indiana. Growing up in the small town of French Lick, Bird learned lessons that would define his career. Hard work, discipline, vision, and an almost stubborn competitiveness that refused to let him settle for second best. By the time he arrived at Indiana State University, he was already writing his legend. Then came 1979, the championship game that changed everything. Bird against Magic Johnson, Indiana State versus Michigan State. Even decades later, that NCAA final is remembered as one of the greatest battles in college basketball. The game wasn't just about a trophy. It was about 2 young stars igniting a rivalry that would elevate basketball itself. Bird may have lost the title that night, but he gained something far greater, a stage that introduced his brand of precision, intelligence, and ice-cold composure to the world. When his playing career ended, Bird didn't fade quietly. Instead, he shifted seamlessly into coaching. He brought the same sharp eye and unyielding standards to the Indiana Pacers, turning them into a powerhouse that reached consecutive Eastern Conference finals. Later, in the executive suite, he continued crafting long-term strategies, building teams with foresight, and showing once again that his genius wasn't limited to shooting a ball. It was in seeing the entire game before it unfolded. Players, fans, analysts, even rival coaches, everyone acknowledged that Bird's gift was his ability to transform not just individuals, but entire cultures. And now imagine that brilliance entering a new stage, a place few might have pictured, the WNBA, and more specifically, the Indiana Fever, a franchise hungry for growth, standing on the edge of transformation, with a fan base swelling thanks to one of the most celebrated rookies in years. Bird's presence wouldn't just bring name recognition, it would bring a depth of strategy, leadership, and mentorship that could elevate not just the Fever, but the entire league. His reputation alone bridges generations, linking the legends of the past with the rising stars of today. The idea of Bird guiding the Fever carries weight beyond the scoreboard. It suggests a rewriting of the narrative around women's basketball, proof that its potential matches the highest levels of the sport. For players, it means the chance to be molded by one of the sharpest minds to ever play the game. For fans, it means the promise of seeing the Fever ascend to new heights. For the league, it means recognition, legitimacy, and the kind of attention that could ripple across every franchise. Larry Bird in the WNBA wouldn't just be another story, it would be a turning point. A living legend stepping into a role that could redefine expectations, transform strategies, and change the way excellence is measured. But as powerful as his name is, there's another piece of this puzzle. A young star already carrying the Fever into the national spotlight. And when those two paths collide, the possibilities become endless. Larry Bird and Caitlin Clark. Could this unlikely pairing reshape basketball history in ways no one dares imagine? Stay with us, because what comes next may leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Caitlin Clark and Larry Bird's unstoppable duo. The idea of Larry Bird stepping in alongside Caitlin Clark is not just another coaching move. It feels like history bending in real time. This is more than swapping one voice for another on the sidelines. It signals the possibility of a revolution in how the Indiana Fever define themselves, how they compete, and how they are perceived across the basketball world. If it happens, this partnership won't just shape plays on the court, it could reshape the very culture of the franchise. Larry Bird is not just a name, he's basketball royalty. His decades of experience, unmatched instincts, and championship pedigree make him a living encyclopedia of the game. He has built teams, sharpened stars into legends, and stamped his philosophy of toughness, precision, and intelligence onto every level of basketball he touched. Pair that with Caitlin Clark, whose vision, scoring brilliance, and fearless leadership have already turned the Fever into the WNBA's most exciting show, and the potential becomes staggering. Together, they could ignite a new era that fans, analysts, and even rival franchises would be forced to reckon with. Every practice under Bird's guidance would feel like a classroom where greatness is taught. Every drill could carry the weight of championship wisdom, and with Clark's natural flair and creativity steering the action, games could unfold with a level of excitement and intelligence rarely seen in the WNBA. This isn't simply about X's and O's. It's about what happens when a legendary strategist merges with one of the boldest, most instinctive players of her generation. But the ripple effect wouldn't stop at the hardwood. Imagine the storm of media attention. Every headline, every televised game, every highlight clip would explode across the sports world. National broadcasters would flood Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Social media would dissect every Bird-Clark interaction, turning each press conference into a viral spectacle. Newspapers, magazines, and podcasts would scramble to capture the story of how a WNBA franchise became the epicenter of basketball conversation. Corporate sponsors wouldn't be far behind. The combination of Clark's star power and Bird's legendary status would be irresistible to brands hungry for cultural relevance. Partnerships, endorsements, and league-wide campaigns could pour in, creating financial momentum the Fever, and perhaps the WNBA as a whole, have never experienced before. Ticket sales would spike, arenas would overflow, and fans from outside Indiana would travel just to witness the phenomenon firsthand. Suddenly, the Fever wouldn't just be a team, they would be an attraction, a movement, a symbol of what women's sports can achieve when bold vision meets undeniable talent. The long-term impact could be even greater. Beyond the dollars, beyond the headlines, the Fever would have the chance to leverage this moment into something enduring. Youth programs could expand, development pipelines could strengthen, and community outreach could stretch further than ever. The franchise could position itself as more than a contender on the court. It could become a beacon of innovation and empowerment, showing young athletes everywhere that women's basketball is not just a sport, but a platform for influence and change. What makes this pairing so unique is the collision of eras it represents. Bird embodies history, wisdom, and the old-school grit that forged dynasties. Clark embodies the future, imagination, instinct, and the modern spectacle that thrives in today's digital world. Together, they could bridge generations, blending classic fundamentals with new-age flair. Their partnership would challenge the traditional boundaries of coaching and player influence, and in doing so, might redefine what leadership looks like in professional women's basketball. This is not just coaching, it's a declaration. It's proof that greatness knows no gender, no boundary, no limit. It's a signal that the WNBA is ready to not just compete with the best of sports culture, but to lead it. The Indiana Fever have entered a new chapter where talent and history collide. What's your take on Caitlin's reaction to Stephanie being replaced by Larry? We would love to hear your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.